Talal Kaissi, you are the Group Chief Global Affairs Officer at G42. I have to say, it's impossible to have almost any conversation here in Davos this year without geopolitics coloring it. And when I think about digital sovereignty, which is a conversation happening both on the main stage and in many sideline events, is this push towards sovereignty being motivated by that uncertainty?
It absolutely is. And I think it's not just geopolitics that is involved here, it's geoeconomics and geotechnology in the world we live in today. I come from the world of geotechnology, and today increasingly it is an intertwined system, right? So I think what we're trying to do at G42 is really help propagate intelligence to provide equitable access to intelligence globally. And so that's what we stand for as a company.
Yeah, and so let's just level set for everybody. When we talk about digital sovereignty, means different things to different people, to consumers, to countries, to companies. So why don't you define it as you understand it?
So, sovereignty is a matter of having a level of control over everything from data to operations to deploying systems and being able to leverage those systems so that they can underpin, because this digital infrastructure is really what underpins the enablement of AI native societies writ large. And so when we talk about digital sovereignty, we do things, at least in G42, where we create innovative models that allow us to deploy that infrastructure in one country, but to be able to serve it in others, like the digital embassy program that we announced a couple of days ago here at Davos.
So explain how that works. So that's sort of like treating your digital world as though it has a legal status?
In a sense. I mean, it's kind of analogous to an embassy, a regular embassy, right? There's a Vienna Convention that provides sovereignty over the land and the building that an embassy hosts. And similarly, in the digital world, you have to think creatively about what that really means. So there are a couple of elements. Legal status is one of them. But then you have technical and policy controls that can allow the companies that are having their data hosted outside of their borders. So you're losing data residency, but gaining sovereignty through those controls, and the G2G agreement on top of it that then solidifies the commitment in terms of protecting that other countries' data sets.
So obviously conversations about data sovereignty, digital sovereignty in general, are not new. They weren't created by AI, nor were they created by the current geopolitical tensions.
Indeed.
What about AI is putting this conversation on steroids?
So it's a very good distinction that you drew, because in the cloud world, you did have to have multiple different cloud regions, and there were only a handful of cloud providers, predominantly from two different countries, right? And so it was much harder to enable sovereignty unless you had a private cloud, a disconnected cloud in every country that could be air-gapped, as they call it, so that you can protect the imperatives. But that's inherently limited from a feature set standpoint and a scalability one by definition. So with AI, it's a little bit different, because you could potentially have a world in which, like in the UAE, where we're deploying a 5 gigawatt AI campus, that's not going to be for 5 gigawatts worth of compute and tokens that are manufactured in that AI factory to be domestically consumed. A lot of that is going to be exportable tokens, but then how do you inspire confidence in the countries you're exporting to that data that they are processing through our systems are also going to be protected? And that's where we come up with those innovative solutions.
That's like this hybrid model of I'm a little bit sovereign, I'm a little bit in the cloud. How do you make decisions about what to put where?
Well, you have data classifications, and the ultimate use cases here are going to be public sector and regulated industries, because they are of a level of sensitivity, not top secret, that still requires a completely disconnected setting in any country, but you want to reduce that footprint to a point where the plethora of other workloads that can benefit from the AI revolution and the AI compute that's being deployed can benefit from that type of deployment in a sovereign way. So it'll be your genomics data, energy data, financial services, the public sector, government services. Those are the types of things that we target through these types of deployments.
Yeah, because I was going to say, obviously the technology is moving so much faster than the construction of the infrastructure or even the regulation around it can, right? So for a country that's not yet there with its own AI stack, how can they participate in the advances that are happening right now in healthcare, in finance, in digital government right now, and not wait for that data center to get built?
And that's also a very good point, because it is prohibitive. I mean, these data centers that we talk about, if you look at it on a per gigawatt level, these are about a $50 billion capex when all things are included. And so not every country is going to be able to even deploy those data centers. It's not a matter of how long it'll take to deploy them in the places that they'll end up going. But how do you accelerate time to value and allow there not to be a digital divide, in a sense? And that's where these types of deployments allow us to provide that service from afar in a virtual sovereign way that allows the company, the regulators, the government institutions in those other countries to embrace those technologies and adopt them early.
So you talked about the digital divide. I mean, this has been an omnipresent topic, right,
Yeah.
for the past year. We saw from Microsoft's AI diffusion report, the end of 2025, 1 in 6 people on the planet are already using generative AI. That's a huge adoption rate for a relatively new technology, but that also means 5 and 6 are not, right? I think we all know what the problem is. Are you hearing any real world, beyond just identifying, okay, we know there's a divide, how do we put proverbial boots on the ground and start to do something about this?
Absolutely. I'm not only hearing about these things, we're actually doing something. What we defined a few Davoses ago, I think it was 2, we coined the term the intelligence grid, somewhat analogous to an electricity grid.
Right.
And the idea is that intelligence will eventually need to be served like a utility. People need to be able to plug in and get that. But unlike electricity, where till today you have 770 million people without access to electricity, and there is that divide, what we need to do is be able to serve countries where even data centers wouldn't ever be able to operate, whether it's an economic issue or an energy issue, and that's where we're able to then provide that access immediately through that intelligence grid and enable AI native societies with or without a data center physically located within their borders.
5 years from now, what does success look like for AI diffusion in your mind?
Well, diffusion in general, I think this should propagate to the point where you are pricing intelligence in a very similar fashion to pricing electricity. So you will see prices go down, access go up, diffusion start to proliferate in a very safe and responsible way. But more importantly, I think it's the use cases that these unlock and drive, in particular in healthcare and education and other areas where we want to move the needle on some of those bigger issues like cancer research, genomics, and how you would then benefit from those types of data sets by having countries be able to access those technologies without physically having to have everything in their country.
Talal Kaissi, thank you so much for stopping by.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Great to see you.
You too. You too.